We enable people, and we enable people to make ideas a reality. And what I want to say about that is there's nothing in our mission that says project. We're really focused on the people and helping people get to the right outcomes. And the best way to do that is through the discipline of project management. And one of the things I like to say is in 2050, one of the goals that I want personally in 2050 is that the execution of projects becomes as important or more important than the ideas themselves. We're here at COP27 with a theme about implementation, in conversations with people that are talking about the problem, talking about the targets, and having a lot of concern about how to get it implemented. That's where PMI comes in. That's what our business is. We are in the business of getting things done. So projects, right? A lot of words have been said here since I've gotten here, and I've been here for 2 days. I hear the word, carbon. I hear the word climate. I think the number 3 word that I've heard is project. And it's in every conversation in these events. There's conversations in the side halls, over lunch, at dinner. The word project keeps coming up, and there's a reason for that. Everybody is working on projects to get to their sustainable goals. Anybody in the rooms working on projects associated with a project? Yeah, so a lot of people in the room are doing that. And they're probably projects and you don't even know it. That's the other part about project management. So what we're hearing is the importance of projects, but what I'm not hearing, I'm really surprised we're not hearing, is how do you get a project from good to great, right? That's not what I'm hearing in these halls. I think that's what needs to be in the dialogue here at COP, going forward. So how do we do that? I mean, we are in the middle of the greatest transformation project on the planet, probably ever. And we have to recognize it as being a project, a program, a portfolio of projects. Next slide. So how do we do that, right? So the answer is through project management. The skills of project management are critical to getting to the success. You see here that by 2030, there's a need for 25 million project managers around the world. And that's project managers and people working on projects. So this group of people, the people that are doing it today and the new people that are gonna be added on in the next 8 years, they're the people that are gonna get the work done. So you'll find between the problems that are stated here, between the targets that are being set here, are the project managers, are the project teams. We saw some research from IBM recently that showed that 85% of companies are saying that they have a sustainability strategy, but only 35% of those companies are actually in the process of implementing. And this is a pretty large execution gap. And based on I'll say the conversations I've had and the sessions I've been to here at COP, that number's that's more positive than I've heard. So that 35%. So I think there's a much bigger gap. And what does that gap do? This gap creates a credibility problem. And you'll hear that in the press. You hear about the greenwashing. You hear about these companies are not getting the jobs done. We have to close that gap. And the way to do that is to materialize the goals into projects so that people can understand. When you show a project to a person and you say, this is what I'm working on, I'm building a wind turbine. I am taking capturing carbon out of this factory, putting it into the ground in a secure way. People can start understanding what net zero means. When you start saying net zero, most people don't understand it. You have to put it into a story. So that's what we're here today to talk about and to really further this understanding. Next slide, please. So the theme here is together for implementation. That is the COP27 theme. I'd like it to be together we implement or something along those lines, because it's the people, all the people that are involved in these projects that have to get it done. Certainly there's technology, certainly there's science, but there's actually the act of getting it done is the hardest part. And I think that's what we're facing right now. And that's where the anxiety comes. I hear it all the time when I'm talking to our customers. They're very, very keen on getting the job done, right? Let's get this implemented. Let's get my sustainable outcomes, but I think there's a lot of anxiety about how to do it. So we hope to think that the project management profession itself and the skills necessary will provide part of the answer. Slide 5. So this climate challenge, we all know, is we'll call it a wicked problem. It's a very complex problem. It's not a simple problem. If it was a simple problem, it would have been solved by now. So there's issues with energy, there's issues with water, there's issues with poverty and access. It's very, very complicated to get through this, for people to understand it and then actually provide some outcomes. So we talked about the execution gap. It leads into the ability for us to talk about how you provide discipline to implement a project. Next slide, please. So we say at PMI, all change happens through projects. An example here is the rising sea levels. The rising sea levels are happening already. We're seeing that primarily in Asia. I heard today that 98% of this particular issue is in Asia, and that's kind of shocking. Infrastructure projects are key to really support and have an adaptation approach, right? We can't just wish for net zero and not look for adaptation as well, because there's going to be some damage done, and there's some damage being done already. I think we're seeing it in the news. PMI's done a lot of work on infrastructure and being very specific about infrastructure. We have offerings to our practitioners that if you want to go deep into infrastructure and how to execute an infrastructure project, we have that out in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So I didn't mention, I'm on the board for the United Nations Global Compact USA Network, and I serve as a volunteer board member. And that service and the service I do with PMI, makes me pretty well positioned to talk about this. Talk to businesses. I've spent 30 years in business to talk to businesses about, yes, profit's important, but the social outcomes, even though we learned about it 30 years ago in business school, the concept's not a new concept, but now I think it's becoming more acute, and businesses are beginning to realize that the social outcomes are as important as the profit. And at some point, if you don't achieve some of these social outcomes, including the climate outcomes, there won't be any profit. So getting ahead of that is really what you see in industry right now. All the major companies here, the ones that I've talked to, the ones that I've seen present, are talking very specifically about this. And they're finding that they can actually make money by taking a sustainable approach to their operations. Just simply looking at their operations in a different way, they can create some profit, even short-term, medium-term profits. So there is some return on investment there. The thing that we're definitely hearing, there's identification of the problem, but everybody's saying it's just not happening fast enough. So it's really time for us to really talk about implementation and what projects can do for you. So we have to close that gap. Next slide. PMI is a for-purpose organization. You see here the UNGC's 10 principles. We're focused on 7, 8, and 9, I believe. Oh, did I go too far? Thank you. We're a for-purpose organization, as I said, a nonprofit. And not only do we provide best practices for project management so you can get your sustainability outcomes, but we also are a volunteer-based organization. In the last couple of years, we've rolled out a project or a program called Hours for Impact, where we have encouraged our community around the world to contribute hours against or for in benefit of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Last year, we pledged over 125,000 hours to this cause. And this year, we're well past our goal. We're over 170,000 hours. So we're mobilizing this community through volunteerism, in addition to what we do as a standard bearer for project management. So we're taking those two-pronged approach to this particular problem, doing what we can do and doing what we do best. Next slide. So the net zero goal, it's a pretty abstract goal. I talked about it earlier. I think the best thing that we can do, as I mentioned, is start articulating what does this mean in the form of a project, right, for the communities. Because the big part of actually project management, frankly, is stakeholder management and being out, in this case, into the communities and explaining to them what you're doing with your project. If you work for a big company or a government, you need to involve a much broader base of stakeholders in order to get the understanding, get the commitment alignment to it, and then get to the outcome. It's not just the old days of putting a project plan together and getting a project team put together and everything's just going to happen naturally. It's much more complicated. Therein lies the problem why you have this gap, right? This gap between what people want to do, what they do, and what they're actually saying. So we're hoping that we can help resolve that. Next slide, too, please. So just an acknowledgement at a high level, Chris Goodall points out the gap, right? That there's a lot of talk about these emissions and a lot of desirability to do things, but no plans. I think we all agree. So next slide. So he lists a top 10 list, and many of us know this list, or it's intuitive after understanding what the issues are. These are things that you can do at a high level to really get to these net zero outcomes, right? There's 10 things there, and this is from Chris himself. But what are those 10 things at the end of the day? If you want to get 1 done, 3 done, 5 done, 8, 9, 10 done, you need a project. There's a project involved. It's just that simple. And I know I'm over saying it, but I think it needs to be oversaid because I don't think it's recognized as a vehicle for change. Next slide, please. So PMI publishes on an annual basis a list called the most influential projects. And it is a list of the projects from around the world by industry, by region, and globally of the most impactful projects that are out there. We've been doing it for a number of years. I'm going to show you a couple examples here just to show these are some very large projects with big outcomes. You see here, this is the Tengger Desert Solar Project or solar park. It's in China. It's the largest solar farm in the world. It powers 600,000 houses, right? So boom, this can be done, right? This was built a number of years ago. It requires quite a bit of investment, but nonetheless, 600,000 homes. Next slide, please. Something a little bit closer to where we are today, a project that's in planning right now. It's called NextGen. It's just in the eastern part of Cairo. And they're developing a net positive city, not a net zero city, but a net positive city. Cities create 70% of carbon emissions and 50% of waste, right? So the thinking behind the design of this project is to not just get to net zero, but to get further. So the goal of this project is to produce more food and energy than they actually consume. Sustainability is woven into every aspect of this project. So they've made the effort to think through this project plan and every aspect of it from a sustainability lens. Next slide. So part of the bread and butter of PMI is we skill and reskill and we upskill professionals around the world. And this is our talent triangle. We've used it for many, many years. And it essentially represents the skills that you need to be a really good project manager, to deliver that great project, not just a good project. You can see here that we talk about 3 types of skills. The harder skills, the ways of working skills. You can see that that's on the left side. There's business acumen skills, and there's also power skills. You have to have all 3 of these. It's not one of these things where you have to choose one leg of the triangle. You need to have all 3. And PMI invests quite a bit of energy and money in understanding what these skills are and broadening these skills every year, because nothing's staying the same. Everything's changing. All the speed of change requires a much more skilled individual. The breadth of the technical skills is broader. The depth of I'll say the interpersonal power skills is deeper. Next slide, please. I think you skipped a slide. No, back up. Did we do this one? I'm sorry if it was up, I didn't realize it was up. So this is the detail of the talent triangle. So what you see here is, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. The business acumen piece, you have to understand the legal and regulatory environments. So if you're a project manager, you don't need to be a lawyer, but you need to understand and have sensitivities to those type of issues. You need to have awareness of the market. You have to understand sustainability, the industry you're in, the ways of working. You know, there's agile ways of working. There's predictive ways of working. There's hybrid ways of working. Risk management, right? You need to understand risk management. If anything requires risk management, it's this type of a topic. And also transformation skills. As I mentioned earlier, this is the biggest transformation project of our lifetime, of the century, of the planet, of the world. Power skills, some of the things that are key here are problem-solving skills, leadership skills, and communication skills. If you can't talk to a community, if you can't talk to your project team, if you can't talk across department lines in an organization or across organizations themselves, across countries, you're not going to succeed. So it's a very dynamic type of a skill. And finally, industry skill is something that's not listed here, but it's implied on business acumen. And you have to understand your industry really, really well to know the dynamics of what you're doing. Next slide. So what's new? What's new from PMI? So we started a strategic partnership in August with a company called Green Project Management. And this partnership is going to be very important for what we bring to the marketplace to our stakeholders in terms of what skills you need to get sustainable outcomes on projects. GPM's been working on standards and certifications for sustainable project management for over 10 years. And we're proud to be partners with them. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. The part of it that I like the most, the approach that they're taking and we're taking with them is not just a net zero approach or a sustainability approach. The thinking is beyond that. It's to be regenerative, right? So that's probably the thinking that's going to stretch everything beyond what we're trying to do in this near term. And what does that mean? You want to design your projects by way of nature-based design, right? It's much more detailed conversation on that, but that really excites me because I like anything that stretches the thinking rather than coming out with something that's just solving the problem. It's something that's going to go much beyond that problem. And it's much more long-term thinking. Next slide, please. So you see here on the left is the traditional, they call the triple constraint, which is what a project solves for: time, money, and scope. You can stop right there. I mean, you think about the problems, sustainability problems, they are by design constrained by money, time, and how much can I get done, scope. But that's not good enough, right? If you really want to understand sustainability and how you get to those outcomes, you have to have other lenses, right? So there's other dimensions that we're going to bring with this offering. It's people, planet, prosperity, product and process, and focus on risk management, focus on benefits realization, and value. Because without the value component, you're not going to be able to convince somebody that you have a good business plan. Next slide, please. So double click here. We're not going to go into the detail here, but the point here is that we're taking those structures, and people will be trained down in these components across people, prosperity, and planet. There's very specific things that you have to do to get your project ready for sustainable outcomes. So we're piloting this product, at the end of this month, and it's going to be released in 2023. Next slide. Couple takeaways. You have to set your standards and set your outcomes up front for your projects. You have to measure the long-term ROI and the benefits of your project. And most importantly, you have to train your project teams. They have to understand how to do it, and they will provide the benefit. If you think about the trillions of dollars being spent on these projects and programs. We have seen in our research that project management practices will save you 10%. So there's $100 million on every $1 trillion you spend, not to mention the component of time that you're going to pick up on. So think about it that way. When you're looking at these macro issues, if you look at the macro impact of project management, it's very, very compelling. And finally, last slide. We started off the conversation with talking about execution gaps, right? The difference between what companies and governments are saying and what they're doing, and how there's a lot of anxiety that's the reason for that gap, but also, that gap is causing a lot of credibility issues with the cause. So it's time to close that gap, and we think the conversation about projects and the discipline needed with projects and sustainability is part of that answer. So we want to make sure that we succeed on these global goals, but it can only be done one project at a time, right? Sequentially, no, concurrently, and there's going to be lots of them. There's lots of them now, and we need 10 times the number of projects we have today in order to get to the goals. So if you think about aggregating all those projects up, that's how you get to the answers. That's how you get to the goals. So I'll close by just saying that, and I said it earlier, that by 2050, we really want the world leaders to value project management, the execution of ideas, as important as the ideas or more important to the ideas themselves. So just join us in the conversation. This is just the beginning. Thank you. I'm going to call up some of my colleagues to do a little Q&A if you guys are up for it. All right. Jennifer Tharp is our board chair for PMI. Jennifer. And Grace Najjar is the Middle East managing director for PMI. Any questions? Go ahead.
This time of the day, my voice isn't as strong as it was, sorry. I totally concur with you. Congratulations on your presentation. I'm Carmen Virasoro from Argentina, and I totally concur. I said that we need to scale the number of projects, and we will need to do them in parallel. So the bottleneck would be here, our teams, how we empower and raise the skills of our teams with a medium to long-term view, because perhaps today we have them. With a lot of effort, we're carrying out our projects in time and with the quality we want. But if we scale that up as the market is demanding us, inevitably the resources will be scarce and we won't have time to build the capacity in-house. So what is your vision to address this challenge, because it is a challenge in the implementation?
The challenges of skilling everybody? Yeah. So it's a multi-pronged approach for PMI. Certainly PMI is known for how we skill professionals, people that are in the workplace, working for governments, organizations. We're also focused on the academic institutions, the youth. We have a nonprofit education foundation, which is a charitable organization that works with other partners, with other youth-serving nonprofits, so that we can get even the younger ones to start understanding project management and the importance of it. And we've had quite a bit of success with that. Millions of children around the world have been equipped with project management skills through these programs, and millions more will. So we're very proud of that. And then that's the who part of it, and then the depth of understanding is, we're building out the depth of content so that we can answer the questions not just generically, which we've done very well in the past, and we're a standard bearer. So when you are a standard bearer, you're providing a larger, a high level approach to things that applies across industries. And we've started taking our steps to take an industry approach, and construction is the best example. We're taking an approach on a category called sustainability, right? So we're going deep on that because the market's asking for it, right? And that's not going to stop us from what we've always done to make sure that you have the hard skills and those soft power skills, and now the growing importance of the business acumen skills because of the dynamic nature of these particular projects. They go across industry. They're not very siloed at all. They're very, very integrated.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
I have a lot of sympathy for the situation that you're in. It's very difficult in the current Argentinian economy as well as many economies around the world. How do you make the most impact? How do you reach the most people? It's so tempting to try to take on projects in multiple different areas because you want to make a change, but you know that you only have so many resources, you only have so many skills, and you need to concentrate those on the areas that can make the most impact for the most people. And that prioritization effort is incredibly difficult. I've worked with governments in the past who have tried to, like, how do you balance building more hospitals versus building more technical capabilities? They're completely different measurements. The outcomes are very different. And so it's very challenging to try to figure out how to prioritize. So, definitely, getting more people that are more skilled, bringing in consultants when you need to, but ultimately, it starts with having to make the really tough decisions about where you're going to invest the time, where you're going to invest the resources, and concentrating those to try to make that work.
And I would like to take a closer look at what we did, because to your point, everything has evolved, lots of complexity, and just having one certification, perhaps it won't be able to fix all of the problems. So how can we get a qualified project managers quickly where we can really add value? What we did is that we evolved our standards to an extent that it's now roaming around people, business, and environment. So we're making sure as you're getting a certification as a project manager, you build the leadership skills in addition to every processes and theories. So to your point, we believe that we have to adopt an approach where we build a whole mindset, allowing our project manager to deliver, but at the same time, as per Jennifer, to focus on the value. We need roads, but not delivered only on time, roads that reduce the traffic and reduce the accidents. So to your point, that's our approach. As the market and the complexity is growing and the emerging trends, be it sustainability or others, we're making sure within one certification, take the PMP, we embed all of the knowledge, including leadership, agility, complex, the business acumen, the aspects that Joe has mentioned. So in addition to that, the point I'd like to make is that we're accelerating the knowledge because we believe knowledge goes beyond the book and our certification. What we do is that we accelerate that through community building, through being so active as you see us in summits, in chapters, in platform where we put peers together so we can learn from others' practices and experience. And if you look at PMI website and our portal on projectmanagement.com, you see lots of articles and case study, which can also accelerate your knowledge and get you a better project manager. Thank you for your question. I hope we answered it.
Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. I wanted to ask how you contribute to convincing the government and the higher institution with the idea of having young project managers. Oh yeah, this is Karima Wali from Egypt.
Well, part of what we do is advocate for the profession. So we do that all the time with governments and organizations. The most important part of that is not talking to people that you need to do something. It's actually listening and understanding what governments need and what organizations need. At the same time, sharing our research with them. So it's a listening and a sharing of information. That process is what really gets us what we need to know to provide the right skills, right? So all the stuff I talked about, the skills, the products that we send in the marketplace, it's based on research and conversations with organizations. We want to know what they want, and we tell them what we see, but they give us the reality, right? We're not just doing it in a vacuum, and then we back it up with research, right? And then we give back into the marketplace what's needed. So that's the most important thing. We have to have credible skills that we're providing, right? And when you do that in a credible way, you get the outcomes that Grace is talking about, then governments will pay attention. And I think we've done that very successfully over the last 50 years.
I'll add that that children are the best learners when it comes to project management skills. I mean, so much of a worldwide trend has been the movement towards project-based learning, that it's a lot less rote memorization and a lot more kids working together on trying to accomplish something. So I find that children are the most receptive, way better than us older people when it comes to learning the tools and techniques of project management and figuring out how to apply them to make the world better.
Sorry, we conducted a research that shows that future project management skills relies on technology, and who better and quicker than the young to capture the technology innovation and all of the aspects. And when you speak to government, they know that their asset are the people, especially in this region, which is trying to diversify from focusing on oil on so on. We know that governments are looking into accelerating the productivity, and we have been facing inefficiency issue. So the government is aware that this youth is going to be the project managers of the future, whether they are into a project management department or not, they will definitely be part of the project. So why not PMI contribute to convert them, if I might call it this way, to whatever they are, to project managers. And we are succeeding because we have offering, to Joe's point, we have a youth strategy and some specific offerings to make their life easier, quicker, so they can be really the productive workforce of tomorrow. I think they are the fuel and the currency of tomorrow. And the good news about this region is government are very much aware of that. They are really investing in the youth, and this is our role as PMI to work closely with the government. Thank you for your question.
Hello, I am Walid Abdel Fattah. I am the Senior Vice President of Hill International Project Management. So it's actually this is what I do for a living, actually. So the last 25 years. So I just want to first apologize for coming late, but I just knew from Lamia that you guys are here. So if we knew this, we would have you have more presence here. So just to capitalize on what you just guys said, I'm going to go here. Number one is, we as Hill International, I'm responsible for Africa, and we're looking for young, and I think young project managers are the wealth where we're looking for. But just a matter of how we can find this. Maybe you as a BMI, as an institution, can help us in identifying these guys. And this is not only Egypt or Africa. We are across the globe. So we are in Europe and South America and Asia. So I think this is maybe something you can do. And I believe project management is good about caliber and everything, but I think it's all about if you will to do it. If you have the will, I think learning, and especially when you are young, is going to happen by nature. So. And the other question is about convincing the government. And I think one example here is the challenges with the government, that when things want to happen like quick. I think when you go through organizations that have the reputation and experience, and you show the government that you can actually respond immediately to the response based on the experience, and showing in parallel the know-how, how things can happen. I think this has proven to be a good case here in the museum, the Egyptian Museum. We're currently doing the monorail, the Cairo monorail, few hospitals around the town. We have done the Cairo Airport Terminal 2, and so through our guys here, now we have almost 500 guys in Cairo, or in Egypt, so one of the biggest offices of Hill International. And I would love to talk to you more about your presence here, because you guys, we're looking for you. I know we have something called Hill University out of the US, which everybody have the platform and access to get the certificate. But I think your presence here will be more appreciated through us, through the American University, through other institutions. So thank you to Lamia. I just met her by coincidence in the airport. It's just and we just over the plane, so that's why I came. But I think this event should have been more known. So and I'm sure there's so many guys should have been here. I mean, including my team. So thank you for being here.
So I want to explain why I asked this question because I work as an environmental project manager in my company. But because we work in the Saudi Arabia government, they always hide that I am the project manager because like when people know that I'm the project manager and I am that young, they are afraid of like the responsibility or there are a lot of millions that or billions that responsible about. So they always like my name is not always there as a project manager, and that's because of my age. That's why I asked this question.
Yes, I totally understand the cultural nuances in there where some of the wisdom of the number of experience is required. But the good news is that we also value some of the innovation and creativity, and institutions like PMI would give you more credibility with some of the certification. Take the Certified Associate Project Manager, some of the other digital and micro cert. I think given what you said, you only need certification and credibility through PMI, which will help you penetrate better and compete, I would say.
So the interesting thing about project managers, and I'll give you some general advice as well. For a career advice, do things that nobody else wants to do and get it done, and people will recognize you and they'll value you. And by the way, that's what project managers more often than not end up being in a position. They're in a position where they have to do something nobody else in the company or the department wants to do, and they step up and they do it. So what better way to get yourself recognized and valued?
I would like to take that name.
Thank you for the great presentation. I'm Sarah Khalil from Egypt. So, is there any future plans for PMI to collaborate with the Egyptian government, like having a sort of branch here or something?
Actually, we are having some strong channel happening. We have connection with American University of Cairo. We have been in Egypt last month through our Agence Universitaire Francophonie, some of our communities also here. We have through our reseller and authorized training partners, I can mention BRISC. Through them, we could have an agreement with one of the Ministry of ICT. We're working through people like Lamia also to get into the Ministry of Planning and Development. Definitely is in our radar. We're trying to accelerate our presence in the region. Chapter is also in our plan. It's not that easy because, as you know, it has to be, we have some constraints and some bylaws, but definitely this is something we're looking at and we're working. We need people like you and volunteer who can help us found that. So definitely I'll get your contact and engage you with us. Thank you so much. Shall we take
Thank
a
you,
photo?
everybody. Thank you.
Please take a photo with us. تشرفنا نتسهل فيك. I have high respect